Areal. That made-up word has become synonymous with the phrase Kickstarter scam and the folks at West Games. The fact is, the Areal Kickstarter is still rooted in mystery and controversy to this day. Launched on June 24th, 2014, and billed as a spiritual successor to Stalker, Areal seemed to be in good hands. Several people from GSC Game World, the developers of the acronym simulator, came together under Eugene Kim and formed West Games. That was the claim at the time, at least. Areal was supposed to be a first-person shooter that explored a post-apocalyptic hellhole, with a big emphasis on realism, staying away from the radiation, fighting monsters that are realistic. Anyway, it really was billing itself up to be the next Stalker. Just listen to what the developers had to say about it. Areal depicts a future where civilization has fallen apart due to an unearthly material called metaphorite, which eventually spreads, corrupts, and infects the whole world. The source of the metaphorite comes from a meteor that impacted the Earth long ago, and it is the site of constant conflict and bloodshed. Areal's story is not linear. Players can choose how their characters act and speak. Everything from how you talk to how you kill changes the storyline of Areal. There is no morality system in Areal, so you are free to make choices that you think are best in any given situation, without being blinded and limited by a standard good-evil system. Oh, that sounds great, doesn't it? I mean, pretty much every Kickstarter campaign sounds great on paper, but this one in particular had everything going for it. It was a spiritual successor, yeah, and you all know how I feel about those by now, but at least it was being made by some of the people from the original, and they were taking it in a new direction. In the original Stalker games, the story didn't really matter, and the player character didn't talk at all, for example. As far as the gameplay is concerned, well, it's a Stalker follow-up in the post-apocalypse. It would have been, I should be saying, a first-person shooter where you have to survive in the world, gather supplies, traverse a big open world, and, you know, that kind of thing. Right, that's all I'm going to talk about the game. Why? Because there never was a game, or if there was, it was being sold on a bed of bullshit and theft. And I'm not editorializing. Well, maybe a little. Because Areal was suspended by Kickstarter, and Kim and West Games have since completely vanished without a trace. Remember GCS Game World, the developers who made Stalker? Remember how Eugene Kim claimed he and most of his team worked with them on Stalker? Yeah, well, that was mostly a large, rotund lie. There is the smallest, teensiest sliver of truth to Kim's claims, but even that's stretching it. You see, Kim and his people did work on Stalker. Oh no, not that one, no. I mean, and this is according to the people who still worked for GCS, that Kim actually worked on an online Flash game that never saw the light of day. This game would have been heavily based on Stalker and released between the first and second games. So even though they were heavily misleading people, they could technically make the case they weren't lying at all. As such, Kim wrote an update talking about how biased VG247 and Forbes were for pointing that out. Even if Kim was involved in development of the original Stalker games, which he wasn't, that wouldn't give him the right to use images, screenshots, and footage from that game to sell his own. I suspect that's ultimately what got the Kickstarter shut down, but we're not 100% sure. It could be some of these other things. If you don't have any idea how game development works, and it's okay if you don't, you might notice that the $50,000 funding goal is pretty low for a game on this scale. How did Kim and team think they could keep the budget so low? Well, who knows, because Kim gave 3 different answers to that question. Before the campaign started, he told Games TV, a Russian website, that the Kickstarter was actually more of a marketing tool to attract publishers than it was to get money to actually fund the game. Actually. Unfortunately, that interview isn't up anymore, though I was able to find a translation on Pure Nintendo, of all places. The game's producer explicitly told us that the success of reaching the 50K mark is meant entirely to show off in front of investors. Factually, that money is needed only to attract the real big cash, because the development of this game of such a game would cost much more than $1 million. It's a common tactic on Kickstarter these days, employed by projects like Rival Threads and Red Ash. If Kim left it there and just said that he was looking for investors, then that would have been fine. But no, he didn't leave it there, of course he didn't. Because on the Kickstarter page, he wrote something a little different. We've pooled all our savings into making Areal, and don't have funds to go any farther. Unlike most companies, every one of our employees has invested their time and money into making Areal. The budget we've pooled together covers salaries and some aspects of game development. We need the Kickstarter and post-apocalyptic communities to support us by helping us cover the rest. So there he was claiming that they were going to finish the game with the Kickstarter funds, which they were able to do because everyone on the team already paid for some of the game. Interesting. You'll notice that makes no sense, considering how expensive the game would be, that Kim already stated he needed a publisher, and that they are covering their own salaries by paying themselves. Anyway, that's probably why he changed his tune again. In an interview with Kotaku, he claimed he already had a deal lined up with publishers, specifically Microsoft. We have a set sum of investment, but I cannot give you exact figures at this time. What I can say is that Microsoft has reached out to us and is interested in our project. With that said, we will remain independent in any case and will release on all the platforms we listed. Of course, we need people's support to help us get the game out there, and of course, the more people contribute, the more resources we have. Whatever the real reason for seeking $50,000 is, we may never know. It very well could have been a scam all along with a number he pulled out of nowhere considering the facts. It could be another reason why Kickstarter shut the project down, since Kim refused to be open with whom he was doing business with. But those were just some of the bigger problems with Kickstarter. Now we stumble into the flat-out bizarre side of things. Like when Kim posted an update on the Kickstarter page claiming he received a letter from the Russian president, politics, Vladimir Putin, congratulating them for reasons. We have inadvertently become a part of an ongoing information war between Russians and Ukrainians. Nowhere is this more evident than in our comments section, which is full of people either attacking Areal or defending Areal. But that's not actually what this update is about, because this update is actually a lot weirder. Out of nowhere yesterday, we got an email claiming to be from Vladimir Putin. Yes, remember that whole Ukrainian revolution / civil war / Russian invasion thing that was going on around the time? Well, you see, Kim and West Games are in Ukraine, and apparently someone thought it was really important to drag a scammy-looking online Kickstarter into it. I'm sure that's exactly what happened. Ignoring the fact that Kim was using a real-world crisis to brush off criticism of his campaign, he actually posted what he claimed to be an email from Putin. No, seriously, he did. President of the Russian Federation, to Eugene Kim. Dear Eugene, my daughter told me about your game called Areal, which is the spiritual successor to Stalker, and told me that she paid money to support your project on Kickstarter. I also love video games as well as shooters, and I like this idea. It's important that our people do not shoot at each other, but instead play games like this. The first part of Stalker took place in Ukraine, and the second game, Areal, you put all events in the center of Russia. And if this is a war with mutants in the video game, then that is very interesting. I attentively familiarize myself with your idea and I really like it. If you give me the chance to play the alpha version of the game, when it is ready, then I invite you in advance to the Kremlin to meet personally. Be ready to play a little bit and talk about the interests of young people, the gamers of our country. Best regards, V. Putin. It's clearly It's clearly fake, any idiot can see that. To their credit though, Kim did say he had no way of verifying if it was real or not, but that's not the point. This wasn't about sharing a funny bit of trolling, it was about perpetuating the whole Ukrainian-Russian conflict online and using that to brush off any and all criticism. Throughout the campaign, Kim made several comments about how anyone attacking the game were just Russian trolls or other Russian sympathizers attacking the game simply because of the motherland or whatever. And he didn't stop there, even going so far as to attack people who clearly aren't Russian or indeed Asian. Eric Kane, a writer for Forbes, wrote an article detailing the more questionable aspects of the Areal Kickstarter. Well, as part of that update where Kim whined about bias and trolls and VG247 and Forbes, he said something about Forbes being bought out by a Chinese company and how they were bankrolling Kane and that's why he was biased. Apparently. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. 8 days later, he actually took that reasoning one step further on West Games' Facebook page. We also had people writing to us saying that a substantial amount of shares from the Hong Kong-based company that Forbes was sold to is owned by state-controlled companies from North Korea. We hope that this isn't true, so we are asking Eric Kane directly, Who really owns Forb now? Yes, that's right. Kim indirectly claimed that Kane was a North Korean agent. Holy shit. There have been some developer meltdowns on Kickstarter before, but I think this one truly takes the communist cake. After all of that, what is there possibly left to say about the Areal campaign? Nothing, other than it has a dumb name.